Do you ever feel like everything's spiraling out of control and that you don't have full control over your emotions or your behavior, or as scary as this might be, you don't have full control over your thoughts? Unfortunately, this is reality for people who suffer from mental illness. My name is Kristen Clancy, and I'm going to talk about mental illness and how it affects the person who's been diagnosed, and also for loved ones who have to bear witness to someone who is suffering from mental illness. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI, 1 out of every 5 adults are personally affected by mental illness. This is a pretty staggering statistic. This means that at least one of us in this class is personally affected by mental illness, or at the very least knows someone who suffers from a mental illness. I'm one of those people. I have a brother who has a severe mental illness, and it can be a really challenging circumstance. I was there with him during the onset of his symptoms. I helped him seek treatment and also get on the road to recovery. And living with mental illness is difficult, not only for the person who's been diagnosed with the mental illness, but also for loved ones who have to witness someone they love suffer from a mental illness. According to the American Psychiatric Association, mental illness can be characterized as something that involves changes in thinking, emotions, or a behavior or a combination of any of these things. And it can also be associated with distress or problems functioning in work environments and social aspects or family events. Now, for someone who suffers from a mental illness, they have oftentimes difficulty having a successful work function or school function. They oftentimes have difficulty organizing their thoughts, and so they may not be as productive as someone who is otherwise unaffected personally by a mental illness. Oftentimes, people who suffer from mental illness have difficulty in social relationships, or the social component is lacking in healthy relationships. And so this can affect romantic relationships, friendships, work or school relationships, you name it. Unfortunately, sometimes someone who has a mental illness has a difficult time with the social aspect. So sometimes they miss social cues or have a hard time sustaining conversations, and so oftentimes it can leave them feeling really isolated and alone, and it can just be overall challenging for that person. And on the flip side, for someone who is watching someone go through mental illness, it can be really difficult and overwhelming and stressful, because you don't really understand how to fully help that person who's suffering from a mental illness, because you can empathize as much as possible, but ultimately you don't really understand what's going on in someone's mind who is affected by a mental illness. So oftentimes, like I said, it can be really stressful or overwhelming, and it can leave you feeling sad and oftentimes hopeless, unfortunately. But the good news is the prognosis is good for someone who suffers from a mental illness if they've been properly diagnosed. That is, that their mental illness has been properly identified, so that they can have a proper treatment plan. Now, this includes having the right medication, and sometimes this can be a little tricky for someone, specifically for a psychiatrist, to adjust someone's medication so that they can have the most successful response. And then also treatment can include counseling, whether that's behavioral therapy or group counseling. Again, it can be really isolating and lonely for someone who's suffering from a mental illness, so getting them involved in a group aspect where they're able to talk with someone who's going through the same types of things, and having a good support network, so those loved ones who understand the mental illness, and then also help support the person who's mentally ill is absolutely crucial. I hoped that this helped enlighten you a little bit about mental illness. If you have any questions or want to know more information, feel free to visit the NAMI website or the American Psychiatric Association website, or feel free to leave any questions in the discussion portion. Thanks so much for watching.